screen share going. And let's see. What I'd like to start off with, Brent, if you don't mind, I've got a couple of polls that I'd like to do. So there should, I'm not sure how you have these set up, but there should be 3 questions that we've got. There we go. Perfect.
Are they popping up there?
Yep, it just popped up for me. Beautiful. We've already got people.
Oh, cool.
Engaging on that poll. That's awesome.
Nice.
And so we got about, what do we want to give? Maybe another 30 seconds here.
Sure. It's kind of funny. I can't actually see any of the feedback on my side, but you see responses?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It must be because I'm the poll launcher. Must be why. Yeah, we're about at 50 seconds, so 10 more.
You guys can tell that we're pros at using this polling feature.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can talk about the breakout rooms after this too. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and say end. Last second vote.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. Cool. So very good. So common data service. Looks like we've got most people aren't really sure what that is, so that's great. I'm going to be talking a little bit about CDS today. Power BI data flows. We've got more people who have used data flows, but most still aren't. So you guys are definitely in the right place here. And I'm not surprised at all with the answers related to Project Oakdale. So let's just dive in here really quickly. So I'm assuming that you're seeing my screen. We're going to talk about, Brent mentioned Dataflex. So Dataflex, Project Oakdale are synonymous. We're going to talk about that really quickly. We'll talk about how does, what is it? Why would you want to use it? What problems is it going to solve? How does the security work in it? Then we'll look at a quick demo video that Microsoft has made available about Project Oakdale, which previously was Dataflex. And then we're going to talk about the data flows. What are they? How do data flows work? And we'll get into actually creating one. So I'll go through a demo and walk through creating a data flow and using that in a Power BI report. So here we go. So what is Project Oakdale? So I mentioned that previously, Project Oakdale was Dataflex. So this was announced at Microsoft Inspire virtual conference. And what they announced was a rebranding as well as a new offering. Okay, so what they did was rebrand the common data service as Dataflex Pro, and then what I'm calling the CDS Lite. So this is a Lite version of the common data service within Teams as Dataflex. So again, these aren't going to be, and Brent, can you tell me if you can see this here? I'm trying to use Zoom it here.
Okay.
Cool.
I don't see any zooming, unfortunately. We just see your slide. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So is there not anything like, so like I'm typing on the screen right now? You're not seeing that?
Nothing. And not on my end anyway, yeah. Yep.
Okay. That's all right. That's all right. So I will say there's not a whole lot of information available right now about what is now being called Project Oakdale. It was previously Dataflex. So Dataflex Pro is no longer a thing. That rebranding isn't going to work. There's a company out there who already has a product called Dataflex, and so there's a conflict in the naming of the products. Microsoft is just going to roll that back, and we're calling it Project Oakdale now. So Project Oakdale is CDS Lite in Teams, okay, in Microsoft Teams. And then the CDS is, as far as I know, is just going to remain the common data service. I will also mention that April Dunham, our user group leader for the Powerapps and Power Automate group, has a great video out on YouTube about what was Dataflex, what is now going to be Project Oakdale, and really a lot of the content that I got for this presentation came from April, and then just a few other you know, some of the Microsoft documents that they got out there. So that hopefully that clears up some of the confusion about the namings conventions of these. I might have just confused you more, but so let's talk a little bit about what Project Oakdale is, or as you're seeing it in the slide here, you know, the CDS Lite in Teams. So what Microsoft says of this is that it is a built-in low-code data platform for Teams that provides access to relational data storage, rich data types, and enterprise-grade governance with one-click solution deployment for these applications. So Project Oakdale is supposed to enable everyone to build and deploy their Power Apps and intelligent chatbots using Power Virtual Agents within Teams. And so I'm saying a lot of things that might be kind of new nomenclature for our Power BI user group. Brent mentioned at the beginning of our, you know, this morning, the very beginning of our meeting, you might start hearing more about the Power Platform and everything that's involved there. So, you know, we're kind of wading into those waters a little bit. There is no current ETA as far as when the Project Oakdale is going to be available. From what I've heard, the public preview is going to be out there before the end of the year, but and maybe as soon as the end of August. So you can be looking for that. The simplified CDS for Teams is going to be included for free in any Office 365 license that includes Teams. So Business Premium, E3, any Office 365 license that you have that has Teams is going to include this CDS Lite or Project Oakdale for free within Teams. So this is great. That's really pretty awesome. The Power Apps, App Studio, and Power Virtual Agents portal are both going to be embedded in Teams. And let's see, there are also going to be some out-of-the-box solutions that you'll be able to use, probably with some tweaking. But the examples that Microsoft gave, one that I thought was great was an employee ideas application. So the idea would be within Teams, you access Project Oakdale, you build an entity that enables you to, and apparently this employee ideas is going to be out of the box one. So you won't even have to build the entities or build the tables, but you can deploy the employee ideas within Teams, and that's going to allow you to engage the members of that team to get ideas on how we can improve this process, or you know, make something more efficient. That's the idea that I had around it. And you can, with this out-of-the-box solution, members of the team will be able to vote on, you know, what are the best ideas there. So just a quick use case, I guess, for Project Oakdale. So let's talk about really quickly, why would you use it? What problems is this going to solve? Well, so I mentioned that one of the biggest benefits to using Project Oakdale is that it's going to give you access to a relational database within Teams. So before this, if you wanted to host an app within Teams, your only option that didn't require additional licensing was to use a SharePoint list. And so what's wrong with using a SharePoint list? Well, really the main problem is that it's not scalable. If you want to build an application that can scale, it's best done using a relational source. And Project Oakdale gives this to you, this free relational data source that you can use to build Teams-based Power Apps. You can also build model-driven apps, which previously you had to have a common data service license to use. So now you will eventually be able to utilize model-driven apps from within Teams using Project Oakdale without incurring that additional licensing that comes with the full common data service. From what I was able to gather, that is not going to be something that is in the first preview release, but it will be, model-driven apps will be something that you can use in later releases. It's going to simplify the app deployment for you. So, you can package your applications, your virtual agents, your bots, these chat bots, your flows, and deploy to the Teams App Store with relatively little effort. And if you are considering this last point here, if you're considering building a low-code, no-code app using Powerapps, so why not do it where your business users already are? April made this great point in her video that the way that we're working now, Teams has quickly become the central point of contact for us as remote workers. So if you're going to build a low-code, no-code app, why not go ahead and do it directly within Teams where your business users are? Here are a couple of important notes about using Project Oakdale. This is intended to be used, again, within Microsoft Teams. So you are not going to be able to open any of these Power Apps that you create using Project Oakdale within the Power Apps Maker portal or mobile app. They're meant, again, to be used and consumed within Teams. And I've been calling Project Oakdale kind of synonymously CDS Lite, right? It's not the full common data service. So if your app requires something like a custom connector, it needs to make a REST call or something like that, you'll still need to use the regular common data service. And again, all of this is very new and subject to change. So certainly wouldn't consider anything set in stone right now. So let's jump over and take a quick look at a demo of what this is going to look like. So bear with me here. I'll get this.
So Jeremy, not to make you do two things at once, but the common data service, as I understood it, it's existed in Dynamics for a while, right? But it's kind of like a define your schema, kind of on the fly, right? And like you sort of say, here's what my record looks like. They call it an entity, and then you don't have to worry about like tables or files. You just say, okay, common data service, store my entity called person with the name on it, and it'll be like, okay, I've stored it in this, I think they call it a table maybe, but a lot of the implementation details, quote unquote, are hidden from you, right? Later you can just go ask, hey, give me my list of persons. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So this is a slide that I have set up a little bit later, but let's just go ahead and jump in and talk about the common data model, which is also kind of synonymous to the common data service really quickly. So the common data model is really a set of predefined schemas that you can load data into. And this can be very powerful if we're thinking about, creating a relational data warehouse. You can see here, and I really wish that my Zoom it was working, but just taking this sales, for example, that we see here, this would be, in my opinion, the equivalent of maybe not a dimensional model, but a sales relational model. So you've got entities within this sales model. We've got competitor, discount, invoice, opportunity, order product. Each one of those they call an entity. It's really just a table. And so again, it's got this predefined schema for each of these entities that you can load data into. So this cuts way down on having really thinking about recreating the wheel, right? There's no need to do that. They've got a bunch of predefined schemas out there, as you can see, for a lot of various departments within the organization, right? So we've got sales, service, finance. These are some of the core, you see over on the left-hand side, we've got core entities. So this is really the common data service. And what you can do is leverage these predefined schemas in all of these different applications, whether it's Powerapps, Power BI, Dynamics 365. There are a lot of different ways for you to do this. And so just in terms of the licensing for it, if you want to utilize the common data service in a Power App that you just want to build one Power App, right? Say you want to build a Canvas app that utilizes the sales relational dimension there with all of those entities. You would pay $10 a month for utilizing the CDS in that app. If you wanted unrestricted access, unlimited access to use it in as many applications as you want, that's $40 a month. So that's kind of how they do the licensing for that piece of it. So does that help kind of, Brent, does that help maybe give some color to what the common data model is?
Yes, sir. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Very good. All right.
I guess with the common data service, you can kind of define your own entities and stuff, right? Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can absolutely define your own entities. You can extend these predefined entities. So, if they're all of the columns that you want in the opportunity entity aren't there, you can add those custom columns to it. So let's take a look really quickly. This is a quick demo video on Project Oakdale and how that's going to work. So you're going to notice over on this left-hand side of the screen, we've got this Powerapps Maker experience that's just going to be natively within Teams. And this is going to go pretty quick, so I'm going to try and, so what he's doing right here is selecting a team where this app is going to live, right? So he says, I want to create an app. So he's selecting the US marketing team. Going to go to create, and then he's going to create a new table, right? And so this is where you would have the ability, I believe, to leverage that common data model. If you wanted to pull in entities, predefined entities, you could certainly do that. In this case, he's going to call it event itinerary, and then he's just going to start building out a custom entity. And you can see that this is giving him access to some rich data types here. I want to pause it at just the right time. So there we go. So you can see that you have access to lookup lists, options, checkboxes, a lot of really complex data types. And so I'll just kind of let this play out and give you an idea of, he's going to build out a scheduler of sorts. And I've got links to this video and all of the content that I've showed you so far in the notes to my talk. So everyone will have access to everything that I'm showing you here. So he's just gonna add it, he's kind of adding rows in here to his table. And then, you know, that is the extent of the demo that Microsoft has for us. But that is Project Oakdale within Teams there. So I want to stop there and see if there are any questions. See, did I just create more confusion around Project Oakdale? How's everybody feeling about it?
I'm watching the chat here.
Okay. Should have done another survey question. So we, you know, maybe we should redo our survey and see how everybody's feeling now. No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, there's really absolutely a lot of potential here. The difference between this and the standard common data service. Okay, so the difference between Project Oakdale and the standard common data service is that Project Oakdale is only going to be available within Teams. So let me share this again really quickly. It's only going to be available within Teams, and it's like the common data service Lite. So you're not necessarily going to have access to all of the capabilities that the standard common data service has. So what we're seeing here says Dataflex. I know that's confusing. Dataflex is no longer a thing. We're calling it Project Oakdale now. And they were trying to rebrand the CDS to Dataflex Pro. They're not going to do that now. There's a legal thing going on between a company called Data Access, who has a product called Dataflex. And so they felt like Microsoft was stepping on their toes. Microsoft is just going to roll back that rebranding. CDS is going to stay CDS, not Dataflex Pro. That's my understanding. And Dataflex is going to become Project Oakdale. So this is like Common Data Service Lite within Teams. Does that answer the question there? Okay. Yeah. Can Powerapps created within CDS?
Yeah, we're getting several questions. Sorry, Jeremy. Yeah, go ahead. You read that one, okay?
That is a great question, Brian. So he asked, can Powerapps created within the standard common data service be added into Teams? That's a great question, and I don't have a good answer for you. I wish that April were here. I'm sure that she would be able to answer that question for you. Sorry about that, Brian. I am not sure. I'm positive though that we're going to have a lot more information about this coming out very soon. So let's see, if we create within Project Oakdale, let's see, and I want to use that data in another Power Automate flow. Yes, I believe that you are going to be able to use the data in those entities that you create using Project Oakdale within a Power Automate flow.
it's kind of the same question as what Josh is asking there at the bottom, where he's like, where if that data lives, it lives in the common data service, it lives in the team, it lives in the Project Oakdale data service or whatever they're going to call it, then how would you access it outside of Teams and Powerapps? I think he was kind of asking the same question. So if someone submitted one of those cool ideas to make the company better, and you wanted to kick off a workflow or kick off a email note, whatever, you know, can you use it? So,
right. This is a great question. It's my understanding that, so again, that the apps that you build using Project Oakdale are only going to be accessible within Teams. So if you're wanting to build a flow that is going to be used within Teams somehow, I think that the answer is yes. You'll be able to use that that Power App based on Project Oakdale or CDS Lite, which is that's how I like to refer to it. I'm probably adding more confusion there. Does that help? Does that help answer the question? It's my understanding that anything that you create, and any Power App that you create using Project Oakdale, is going to be an app that is meant to be used and consumed specifically within Teams. So let's see here. Besides scalability, what is another benefit of using Project Oakdale over a SharePoint list? Really, that is the biggest one. You know, just having a relational data source, that was the biggest benefit that that anybody that I could find that anybody really mentioned. You know, you are, I think there's going to be again, you're going to be able to utilize model-driven apps, which is going to be another benefit, where previously with model-driven apps, you had to use the standard common data service. So another benefit of Project Oakdale is that you'll be able to create a model-driven app off of Project Oakdale within Teams. And you won't have that additional licensing that I mentioned that's associated with the standard common data service.
I think the only other thing about SharePoint, I guess it's the same thing as scalability, but just they have some limit of what they'll store. So if you're storing a lot of something, eventually it becomes a, you know, just a problem. You're going to hit some cap eventually, but
yeah. I mean, if we're talking about really building scalable apps, you really want to base those off of a relational data source. You know, I think that coming up with something really quick and dirty, using a SharePoint list is probably going to work just fine for you. But if you're wanting to build something that's going to scale to like the enterprise, it's not just going to be used within this one little part of the organization or just by you specifically, then yeah, you really want to utilize a relational source. Would this cause sandboxing issues in the future? Is an interesting question, and I don't know that the folks at Microsoft have thought that far down the line, because I could certainly see how it might. That's a great question. You know, if I'm understanding the question correctly, the Teams-based Power Apps that are based on Project Oakdale, right? They are going to be within a team, right? So that's, you know, let's just jump back over to the presentation here really quickly. That's how security is going to work with these Power Apps. It's just going to work off of the security permissions that are natively within Teams. So I can certainly see how that might introduce some issues, some sandboxing issues in the future. Let's see. And let's see, so this is the last question that we have here. Where is the data captured, created? Where is it captured, created, and lived? And how can the data be shared or accessed outside of Teams and Powerapps? So hopefully I answered that second part of the question already, but again, the Powerapps that are built on top of Project Oakdale are intended to be used solely within Teams. So you can't use this app outside of Teams. It's meant to be built and consumed directly within Teams. In terms of where does the data live, it's my understanding, and we're going to get into this a little bit more during the talk about data flows, but it's my understanding that data flows are, that the data is going to live in Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. I may be wrong about that, but that's my understanding about where it's going to live. So let's keep going here with the presentation and talk a little bit about data flows. Well, and so again, security, just really quickly for these Teams-based Powerapps that are built on Project Oakdale, you're going to have one Oakdale environment per team within your Teams application, and that user environment is going to map directly to the team. Security is going to be managed by that native owner, member, guest security model that you have within Teams. So the security is really going to be pretty simplified. It's just going to automatically take and use those built-in permission levels. Okay, so what are data flows? So data flows are a related topic somewhat in that it can leverage the common data service. Data flows are, it was actually just, and I think it's still in preview, but it was released not that long ago. Data flows are something that you can use in Powerapps, but something that you can also use in Power BI. And so this has been something that's been in Power BI for quite some time. What data flows do for you in Power BI is make the ETL process a first-class citizen. So if you found yourself ever doing the same types of ETL procedures over and over again, you are a good candidate for leveraging a data flow. But not just that. I would very much recommend using data flows to standardize and centralize the ETL process. So what you do with them, what they allow you to do is to ingest, transform, integrate, and enrich on-prem or cloud-based data by defining the data source connections, the transformation logic, and refresh schedules, and more. So you can see that in this graphic that we've got here on the screen, what we're doing, and so the data for data flows, as I mentioned previously, lives in Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. I believe that that's where the data for the Oakdale is going to live as well, but again, I could be wrong about that. So how do data flows work? They are created and managed in a workspace in the Power BI service. So a lot of people will call, and I've heard this quite a bit, they'll call Dataflows, the web version of Power Query Editor. And it is that, but it's a lot more. Again, it allows you to standardize and centralize the ETL process for for all of the data sources that you're wanting to connect to and model, right? So data is for Dataflows are going to be stored as entities in the common data model, again in Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. We talked about that common data model is the standardized kind of modular extensible collection of schemas that's published by Microsoft that are designed to make it easier for you to build, use, and analyze what I like to call data assets, really. There is a difference. So you do have to be licensed in order to use Dataflows. So you have to, at the very least, have a pro license. But as you would expect, there is a difference between using Dataflows with Power BI Pro licensing versus premium licensing. The biggest difference that I've seen is just the availability of incremental refresh with premium licensing and having 100 terabytes of available storage versus 10 gigabytes per user with only the Pro license. So that's, again, 10 gigabytes of Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage. Dataflow refresh scheduling is managed directly from within the workspace, just like you would do scheduled refreshes for your data sets. And when you have Power BI, so you can bring your own connection here too. So just by default, Power BI is going to store your data in Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. But you can actually, in the admin portal of the Power BI service, you can come in and say, I've actually got my own data lake storage that I want to use, whether it's, I think that you could use Gen 1 or Gen 2. And so you can come in and configure that in the Power BI admin portal. Another huge benefit of using Power BI Dataflows is that having the data stored in Azure Data Lake Storage means that you can use a lot of these other Azure services to leverage that data. So these are things like Azure Machine Learning Studio, Databricks, Data Factory, and more. So that's a huge benefit of leveraging Dataflows. So here's a couple of important notes to take in using Dataflows. There again are those differences between Pro and premium licensing, and one of the links that I've got in the notes that I'm going to make available to you is going to have a breakdown of exactly what those differences are. The Power Platform Dataflows, so again, there are Power Platform Dataflows, and you can utilize those within Power BI as well. And also, I guess lastly, if you're wanting to utilize a data flow with on-prem data sources, just like really with any kind of on-prem data, you're going to have your gateway set up and configured. So that's enough talking. Let's actually get into a quick demo of what creating a data flow is going to look like. So I'm going to share, let's see. share this screen here. So I am just going to hop over to so I'm in the Power BI service right now. And I'm going to hop over to my Oki Power Platform user group. And I've got the new look turned on here in the service. And I'm just going to say new and data flow. Okay. So you can see that we've got 4 different options here. I'm just going to choose this option that says define a new entity. And the screen that we're seeing here should look very familiar to you. So this is really a lot like what you would see if we're saying choose a data source, right? In this case, I'm going to use the API that's available on the CDC website for this data set on COVID deaths. So I'm just going to go to the API here, copy that, slap in this URL, we'll say next. And this brings up the Power Query editor that we're all really very familiar with. So this API, much like what you would expect with a lot of JSON responses, we're going to have to convert this to a table. And then I can expand out my records. So I'm just going to uncheck this box that says use the original column name. If I didn't uncheck this box, you guys probably know this, but it's going to append column 1 to all of these names here. So I'll just say OK. I'm going to do a little bit of modeling here just to show you guys, again, this was one of the huge benefits that you've got with using a data flow is that I'm going to do all of these modeling and transformation steps. And then other people in my organization are going to be able to leverage this data flow directly within Power BI Desktop. So this is assuming that they have access to that workspace where you have the data flow. But I'm just going to turn these into a, let's see, it looks like is there a time on there? Those look like just dates to me, so I'm just going to turn them into dates. Oh, so it didn't like that. Let's turn it into a date time. Okay, so I've done a couple of modeling steps. I'm just going to save and close this. And so it's going to ask me to name this. I'm just going to say this is a test for our PFOG presentation. Okay. And you'll see this is really nice. It actually pops up and asks, do you want to refresh now? So our data flow doesn't actually currently have any data in it. So it's not until we actually refresh this data set that it's going to be populated with data. So that's one thing that you have to understand about creating these is that you go through the process of connecting to the data, modeling it, doing your transformations, saving it, and then you'll need to refresh the flow so that there's actual data populated in it, okay? And this takes a little while. I ran one this morning so that we could just hop right over to Power BI Desktop. And so let's do that here really quickly. I'll hop over to Power BI Desktop and show you what it looks like accessing a data flow within that. Okay.
So, Jeremy, I think that the point that confused me right from the beginning when I first heard of data flows is that the data is going to, is it landing, where is it? Is it landing in a data set that lives in the Power BI service? Or is it landing in the common data service to be accessed later and pulled into a data set?
So the data for your data flow is living in Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. That's where the data lives. And it is actually living in folders that are common data model compliant, meaning that they're going to call, so it lives in a folder, and within that folder are CSV files essentially. And so I'll be very candid with you all. I was certainly not, I'm no expert on Project Oakdale or Dataflows. So Brent was, he was very accurate in saying that our afternoon sessions were going to be not quite as in depth maybe, or we want people to come present in these from every level of every skill level, right? It would be great to have some more beginner and intermediate presenters here. But back to your question, Brent, that data is living in Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, okay? And so whenever you are going to access this in Power BI, I'm just going to say, let's get data here. And I'll just go ahead and select it since I've got it in the list, Power BI data flow. Since I did this previously, it's going to go ahead and sign me in. Normally what it's going to ask you is, so it's using that Azure AD. You can see that I'm signed in up here in Power BI. If you weren't already signed in, it would ask you to sign in to your tenant. And then the workspaces that you have access to that have a data flow in them are going to show up here. So we can actually see the test that I created. And here's the one that I created from this morning. And so I'll just go ahead and select that. We can choose to actually transform the data right here within Power BI Desktop. So if I wanted to mash up some other data with this, I could do that right here. Or we can just load it into memory. Another really interesting and cool feature that I discovered in research for this is that you can go into existing Power BI desktop models that you have, and because the Power Query service online and Power Query editor and Power BI desktop are leveraging M, you can just copy your queries or even folders of queries from within Power Query in Power BI desktop. You can literally hit Control-C and then hit Control-V in the Power Query editor online experience that you guys saw just a few minutes ago, and it will paste those directly in with the data connections and everything else, which was pretty amazing to me. I thought that was a really neat feature. But here you see we've got the data that I put in that flow with the transformations that I did. We've got some dates here, right? So that is Power BI data flows. Any other questions?
I see one couple from Abe kind of saying, following up on my earlier question, is the main benefit of Oakdale over traditional CDS that we do not have to pay the $40 a month for the CDS instance itself? Is it, you know, as you were saying, if it's included in the Teams licensing, does that mean you pretty much can do as much as you want to as long as you have a Teams license?
Yeah. So again, Project Oakdale is going to be, it's going to be packaged for free with any license, with any Office 365 license that includes Teams. So if you've got an Office 3, whether that's E3 or Business Premium or whatever, if you've got a SKU that includes Teams, you're going to have Project Oakdale available to you. And so I would certainly say that that is a huge benefit of Project Oakdale over the standard CDS, is that you're going to have this CDS Lite that you can create as many entities as you want, and not have to pay that additional licensing that is associated with the Common Data Service itself. And so, you know, licensing for the Common Data Service is either $10 per app per user, meaning I'm going to leverage Common Data Service in just this one application that I've got. So I'm going to pay $10 per user per month. So that's one version of the licensing. The other one is the one that Abe mentioned, where you can just pay $40 a month and have unlimited access to however many applications that you want to build on top of the CDS. And my understanding, unlimited number of users as well.
Okay, and then Jamin put in the chat there, he said, still not quite understanding Microsoft's story here on Power BI data flows. What's the difference between a Power BI data set that contains this login and a data flow? I mean, no, I understand that. I'm thinking the same thing. It's like, why wouldn't I just manage a data set? I can schedule refreshes, you know, I can point multiple reports to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. And so the big difference is that with a data set, you're going to have kind of prepackaged DAX expressions, prepackaged. So Reza Radicat has a great article on this, but he says, think of data flows as a way to populate a data set, essentially, right? So if we were to go, let's go back over here and look at my my Power BI desktop file really quick. So right now I've got a data flow that's populated in here, but you know, there's no relationships. I would have to pull in multiple queries, right, to start creating relationships. So the intended use case for the data flows is that you standardize the ETL procedures associated with that flow, right? This is my understanding of the big benefit and the big difference between data flows and data sets. And you know, then we can use, if we curate, you know, a number of these data flows, we can bring these into our Power BI desktop file and then publish out a data set that is built on standardized data flows. Does that help answer that question? Because that's a great question, Jamin, and I had the same question myself. And I have the link to Reza's article on that in my notes as well. So he does a much better job of explaining it than I just did.
Yeah. Jeremy, I think you did an excellent job. Brian mentions that, you know, he says that's a really big deal to be able to copy and paste into the browser and out of the browser, and you can do that with whole folders and groups, which is pretty nifty.
Yeah, pretty incredible. You can do it with folders, you know, individual queries. You can do it with functions that you defined. Just really very cool, very cool.
The only other scenario where I heard, oh, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying they're really tightly integrating that Power Query online and Power Query in the desktop. So yeah.
The only other scenario that I heard, I think it was one of the SQL BI guys talking about when you might think about a data flow. Is it, if you have a data source that is either very slow or you really don't want to go back to it, you want to avoid going back to it as much as you can, the data flow might come and pick up the data one time and then let many different data sets reuse that, that particular data flow. It's probably going to perform a lot faster once the data has gone through the transformations and landed in the common, landed in Azure ADLS Gen 2, you know.
Right. That's right.
So,
and that's a great point, Brent. You know, in the example that it's absolutely about reusability, Jamin. In the example that I gave you guys, I only made just a couple of transformations to that data set, but imagine a situation where you've got, you know, tens of, you know, maybe even hundreds of transformation steps. And you certainly don't want everybody in your organization to have to go through those, and you yourself, if it's a data source that you're going to want to reuse, then yeah, you certainly don't want to have to go through that with every workbook that you open. So define a data flow. It is a really very cool feature, and I'm glad to have been able to present on it. I learned a lot about it myself in the process of presenting. I would challenge and encourage any of our members who want to present. This is a great way to dig into Power BI. It kind of forces you, right, to learn about a new feature. I honestly, before presenting on data flows, I knew very little about them. And like I said before, we're wanting people of all skill levels to get in and present at our meetings. So please, if you have any interest, you know, let Brent know. We'd be glad to have you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Cool. Hey, thank you very much, Jeremy. Really appreciate you doing that. I'll share my screen here again for kind of some of our last slides. And I mean, first, I just really want to say thank you all who have been participating today. You guys, I've had some opportunity to work with the user group organizers and the leaders, and like they all say like, yeah, your group is the best group. I mean, they don't say it in so many words, but I know that our group is the best group. And so we really do have just one of the best out here, and just in terms of participation, engagement, people coming back to meetings, and